The fuel crisis in Nigeria is gradually being addressed by relevant authorities. Reacting to the saga of the adulterated petrol imported into the country, which was said to have damaged some vehicles, President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday said suppliers of the methanol-blended petroleum products in the country were liable for the bad fuel and should be held accountable. In a statement by his spokesman, Malam Garba Shehu, Buhari said the protection of consumer interests was the priority of his administration. He said his government was ready to take necessary measures to protect consumers from hazardous products, loss or injuries from the consumption of substandard goods. The president directed that in line with the law, service providers must make full disclosure of relevant information with respect to the consumption of their products. He said dissatisfied consumers were entitled to proper redress of their complaints. It will be recalled that the withdrawal of the fuel is behind the recent petrol scarcity that has caused long fuel queues in some towns and cities across Nigeria. Well, a new development here, and just follows from what we were saying yesterday, that while the NNPC's apology is appreciated, it doesn't quite cut it, and proper redress should be made. There needs to be restitution being made. And I think you mentioned yesterday the Consumer Protection Agency, which is headed by Mr. Babatunde Rukera, and I've read more recently, after your comments there, that they have put in place a mechanism to actually address those who have suffered losses, because it cannot be down to the consumer who went to buy petrol in good faith and put this petrol in their cars and their generators to pay for the damage done. So this is extremely important, and it's a good sign.
Okay. Well, I mean, the president has been very firm and consistent with regard to what has happened. And I guess that this is as a result of the fact that this could be a comment on his legacy when it is reviewed eventually. Because one of the things that the Buhari administration has been able to sustain after the Jonathan administration is to ensure no disruption in the supply chain with regard to PMS, what is popularly known as petrol. And now in the twilight of his administration, he has this very embarrassing moment. It's not as if it's a glitch. We're talking about 371 million liters of petrol brought in a bad shape. So the president, in being very stern in saying, look, Hesmon's role, I think, beyond the query, now he has made a statement again. He's trying to distance himself from this and say, look, people who have caused problems, they should take responsibility. And it was good that the head of the midstream and the downstream petroleum regulatory authority, Farouk Ahmed, when he finally woke up and visited some filling stations in Lagos, made the point also that, his authority is ready to take responsibility. But beyond responsibility, beyond the query, the president is now saying there must be sanctions. But what I like about the president's statement is the emphasis on consumer priority, making the consumer's interest a priority for his administration. And that's something that we don't always consider in this country. Either it's in terms of healthcare or transportation or any other aspect of national life, the interest of the consumer is often discounted. So the president waking up to that realization, I think is very important. And what he has to do is to ensure that sanctions are appropriately administered. After all, the buck, as we always say, stops at his desk. However, there have been other dimensions to this in the last 48 hours. What is that Yoruba thing about nobody wants to be accused of having taken the missing knife or something? We've seen a lot of trading of blames. Yesterday, when Rotus was on this program, he brought up the issue of MRS. MRS saying we are interested in the comfort and the best interest of our consumers, and that MRS is not the company that brought in the contaminated fuel. In fact, they went ahead to name Litasco Duke Oil, which is a trading partner of NNPC, as a company responsible for the off-specification fuel that caused this turmoil in the country. Now, yesterday, there was also a statement from the EMADEB consortium. EMADEB consortium is made up of Britannia, Himayaki, one other group, about 4 of them. And they put out a statement that the company that is responsible for the off-specification fuel from their own end, 900,000 liters, I think they said, of fuel that was brought in, was brought metric tons, not liters, metric tons, 90,000 metric tons, 90,000 metric tons, was brought in by Britannia U, which is a member of the consortium. And they are saying that the EMADEB consortium generally, they are not responsible for anything. They even pointed out that Britannia U had indemnified them as far back as June 2021, because Britannia U, according to them, does not want to be a team player. And that now Britannia U has brought in 90,000 metric tons of off-specification fuel, and that nobody should look at the consortium as a group. So these are interesting revelations. And this is why the president's position that there must be sanctions, that those who may have engaged in acts of economic sabotage should be identified and be sanctioned accordingly. This is where it becomes very important. So at the end of the day, it is useful to the general community. What lessons are we learning? And why do we have to depend on all these, off-spec, on-spec speculators to bring in fuel? Nigeria is heavily resourced in terms of hydrocarbons. So why can't we process our own oil here? Why do we have the direct sale, direct purchase agreement? Why is the NNPC monopoly, maintaining a monopoly in terms of supply of refined products? So the president, it's not enough for the president to just say, oh, I've given a query, I want people sanctioned, consumer priority is important, people should be compensated. There are bigger issues for the president to look at. And as a man who has been Minister of Petroleum twice in this country, I don't think he needs further education from me or from any other person about what is involved. He should know, because he has been there, because he's there. So it is for him to go beyond the press statement, which I think is well-meaning. He shows he's on top of it and he's focusing on it. But there are certain consequential actions, even beyond sanctions, that will need to be taken. That's my opinion on this subject.
But he's kicked that can 18 months down the road to the next president. He's not looking at anything, quite frankly. Well, that's all on the news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rota Sadiri, Adeswa Moran, and Aaron Akirjala to give us updates on African business, COVID-19, and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rota Sadiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning.
Good morning, Tunde. Good morning, Doctor. Focusing on West Africa today, particularly on Nigeria, and the outcome of the Bankers Committee special meeting yesterday, which was followed by a press conference by the Central Bank Governor of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele. So the big story coming out of yesterday's Bankers Committee is that there is this RT $200 billion non-oil scheme. And essentially, RT is race to 200 billion. The Central Bank Bankers Committee is looking at essentially being able to boost Nigeria's non-oil exports to the tune of about $200 billion within the next 3 to 5 years. It's ambitious. He did say it's pretty ambitious. But, hey, if you shoot for the stars, you land on the sky. Is that how the saying goes? Also, the CBN has extended its intervention rates, which it reduced by 400 basis points from 9% to 5% for another year to March of 2022. It was supposed to expire this year. Now, if we take a look at, there's a number of, first of all, I think we should, as part of this Bankers Committee, the outcome of the meeting, Central Bank did, of course, go through its COVID-19 response. And I think if we have a list here that we can look at in what the actions that were taken by the central bank in order to assist the economy. So that interest rate I just talked about there, 1 year moratorium extension on intervention facilities that have been extended to different sectors of the economy. That second point, rate reduction on intervention loans, 9% to 5%. That 5% was supposed to expire March of this year. It's now been extended to 2022. Then you've got the 300 billion naira targeted credit facility for households and SMEs. You've got a 100 billion naira facility for pharmaceuticals, 1 trillion loan facility for manufacturing and processing in critical sectors of the economy. And then diaspora remittance programs like the Naira for dollar. And this, this is part of what Doctor was saying the day before, 2 days ago, about the central bank, just trying to be everywhere. Next up, we go through disbursements, which was also talked about at the outcome of the meeting. So you've got the Anchor Borrowers Program, 948 billion naira so far. The targeted credit facility I just mentioned prior, 368 billion been disbursed. The real sector support facility, 1.5 trillion in that sector. Healthcare's got 15 billion. The agribusiness SME investment scheme, 134 billion there. Even the discos got some help. The Nigeria Electricity Stabilization Facility, 229 there. And then the National Mass Metering Program, about 47 billion. So all told, I think this is about 3.2 trillion or so. So now we get closer to the FX scheme. The central bank governor did list out Nigeria's major sources of foreign exchange. You've got, of course, oil exports, which dominates our FX earnings. Then you've got proceeds from non-oil exports, sesame seed, anything that's non-oil. Then you've got the diaspora remittances, money coming from overseas, and then you've got foreign direct investment and portfolio investment. So those are the sources. And then so now we get to the RT200 scheme itself, and then the key anchors that he described. So one is value-added export facilities. And Gordon Emefiele stressed that if you are a business that is opens up a facility or extends an existing production facility that adds value to the raw materials that we export, then you're going to get support from this value-adding export facility. So the example he gave yesterday, as he was saying, and I just knew he was going there, he mentioned chocolates, right? So you've got Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, who export cocoa beans, but they are not a part of the, $140 billion global chocolate industry that Belgium and Germany and the UK and the United States all benefit from. So if you are a business that is involved in the value add, as in making chocolates, you're going to get assistance with that facility. The second one there, non-oil commodities expansion facility, kind of supports the first point, the value add, in that if you need assistance with inputs for your value add, then that facility is going to support that. Also, they're going to focus more on commodities where we have an advantage in, right? So an advantage in producing. So that's going to focus there. Third, of course, there's a non-oil FX rebate scheme. The non-oil FX rebate scheme is a local currency. It's kind of like the Naira for dollar scheme, whereby if you are involved in value add and you show evidence of your exports that have brought in foreign exchange and you sell those export earnings, or at least a portion of them, into the I&E window, that's the investors and exporters window, which is a pool, you will get, depending on the value of depending on the value of the dollars that your exports bring in, you'll get a Naira rebates for that. He said over the next couple weeks or so, they'll bring out more details. And then a dedicated non-oil export terminal. That fourth point is very important because he mentioned in his press briefing how, and we know the problem, we've talked about ETO here and the ports and all these, how much Nigeria loses support. So there he's looking to partner with the states for the dedicated non-oil export terminal. He's essentially threw out an invitation to the states, any of the state governors that want to partner with the Bankers Committee for an export terminal that can be dedicated for this particular scheme. That's going to help a lot because we know the issues that we have. And then the biannual non-oil export summit is supposed to include all the players in the industry that can come together and review whether, what's going on, if the schemes are working, and then also just talk about the issues. But he said it's not going to be, the export summit is not going to be a gathering for people to come and start complaining and lamenting about how bad things are. For every complaint, it has to be followed by a solution. So yeah, that's essentially what was broken down yesterday, and again, he's looking at 3 to 5 years and seeing if that's possibly can increase our exports as far as getting to that 200 billion naira mark. Still in Nigeria, Timi Presilva, you recall after the end of the Federal Executive Council meeting on Wednesday, said the government is considering compensation for damaged cars that were, impacted by the bad fuel, which unfortunately were quarantined and, so on and so forth. How that's going to work is the question. How do you stop people from corrupting this practice and saying their car was damaged when they had nothing to do with buying any of the bad fuel? If you've noticed, ask yourself this: when was the last time you bought or you got a receipt for buying fuel in cash? Most of our fuel stations in the country don't offer receipts for cash purchases for fuel. If you buy with a POS, you get a POS receipt, but that receipt is the POS receipt you get from buying fuel at the fuel station is no different from the receipt you'll get from buying a pair of shoes at the mall. It'll just be the bank information, generic stuff. So how do you prove that you purchase fuel at a particular fuel station on a particular day at a particular time if you don't have a receipt? So all these kinds of challenges are what would come in the face of trying to compensate folks. And remember, this is not the first time this has happened. This happened before. There wasn't compensation then. So how do you know there'll be compensation now?
Oh, well, there should be.
Well,
and I don't imagine it's a case of any Joe Blogs can just rock up and say, oh, I bought fuel, so give me some cash. No, I don't imagine that to be the case. I'm hoping that what will happen, what will be more practical, is to set up a way that people can take their cars or their generators for repairs in dedicated centers that can repair them. And they will know, based on the repairs that are needed, whether or not that damage was caused by the fuel. This method.
Yeah, but then how do you, if I show up and say that my car was damaged, how do you prove that it was or wasn't?
No, but you want to have specific markers based on
the methanol, right? The methanol content.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, so it could. I mean, but then there's the length of time that would take in order to do that. There is also the cost. What are the implications? You either have to replace the engine or fix it. Either you're going to outsource it to private entities, or the centers you're talking about, like vehicle inspection centers, will do that. So, it's right.
But the outlay is important.
Of course it is.
It has to be done. They have to figure it out.
And it could be tested legally if somebody wanted to sue.
It has to be done. But regarding CBN, I think this is really great, and it's consistent, because obviously you'll recall, like a couple of years ago, CBN increased the ratio. Loan deposit ratio.
Yeah, to 65%.
So CBN has really been on this thing, encouraging banks to actually lend more to the real sector. So for every every 100 naira a bank has as a deposit, you're supposed to have 65 naira as a loan.
Loans,
so I find this consistent, which is always helpful. And like you said, it is ambitious, but it's important to be ambitious.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the whole essence of life.
CBN is overstretching itself.
Okay.
And it's as follows. Okay, we've talked on this program about what is called the gap theory.
Yes.
In the Nigerian government. When people do not perform their functions, some other people who are proactive, who are more enthusiastic, will step in. And at what point would the CBN stop overstretching itself and carrying the load of Nigeria like Sisyphus on its back?
Atlas.
If you look at, Sisyphus also continue to struggle, pushing the border up the hill. So Atlas and Sisyphus represent the same metaphor. Now, in this particular case, some of the things you talked about non-oil exports and all of that, and what the CBN is doing, there's a trade dimension to it.
Indeed.
Where are the people in charge of trade? The Ministry of Industry and Trade, MITI, as we started Trade and Investment, MITI, as we called it in our time.
Yes.
Okay, so here is the CBN moving ahead with some of these measures. But the main people who also have core responsibility in that regard have not had their name in that conversation. And the weak link in trying to address the challenge of economic growth, recession, and some of the headwinds in the Nigerian economy has been the failure of the Buhari administration to make sure that the people who are on the fiscal side of the matter do their job.
Yes.
And that in itself limits some of the efforts, being made by the CBN, either it's in agriculture, or it's in diaspora remittances, or it's in trade-related facilities. In these matters, look, if you have a disconnect between the monetary side and the fiscal side, then you can't achieve results. And that's why when you are looking for one of the reasons why nobody should be so enthusiastic about economic growth going up beyond the COVID, this is the root of the problem, in my view. Secondly, on the issue of compensation for persons whose vehicles were damaged, I think the government, through Timmy Presiva, because you quoted him, has been talking from both sides of the mouth.
Yeah.
When the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timmy Presiva, addressed State House press call on Wednesday,
Yep.
now he said the issue of compensation, when he was asked that question, that nobody should jump the gun, that it is dependent on the outcome of investigations that he said the president had approved. So this morning you are now saying government has said the compensation will be paid.
Well, considering if it will be paid.
Oh, okay, they are considering.
It's
okay.
right there at the bottom of the screen, considering.
So if they are considering, okay,
considering.
If that is what you are saying, because he qualified it on Wednesday.
Yeah.
He said, look, it is after the investigations that government can now take a decision. So that clarification is important so that nobody is misled.
Right.
Now, the next part of it will be to determine who will pay that compensation. Aggrieved customers have been attacking petroleum filling stations.
Yes.
In Port Harcourt, 20 petroleum filling stations had to shut down because consumers were attacking them. And there are groups, even IPMAN, the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, is threatening to sue NNPC. Even now, we are not even sure who brought in this off-specification fuel. MRS, one of the 4 companies named in the matter, says, no, it is not guilty. That is not the one. That is the NNPC that is guilty. Through Duke Oil, his trading partner.
Yes.
By this morning, the MRDEB consortium, they are fighting among themselves. 3 of them have disowned Britannia U. They say, no, it's Britannia U that is guilty. So, if the president says consumer interest is important, yeah, that's what we can hold on to for now.
Right.
When the investigation is established, people should be sanctioned, yes, as the president has directed, and persons who can establish their claims under tortious liability, right? The law of tort is what is relevant here, should also be compensated. Okay, but who will make that compensation? We're likely to see a series of litigations. We're likely to see more of these groups involved saying, oh, it's not me, it's the other person.
Right.
A lot of finger pointing. The government has a responsibility. So beyond issuing press statements and threats.
Can I just ask you, I'm sure both of you can attest to having your electrical appliances blow in your home.
Surge.
Because we go through these things. You invest, I don't know, in a TV or whatever, and like weeks later it's destroyed.
Right.
And you know, you're out of pocket for it. It has to stop.
Right.
It
has to stop. It's just not right. As for CBN, I have a question for you though.
Yes.
Okay, CBN bearing the weight of the world, like Atlas. Is the foreign exchange turning the tap on and off? Who gets what and why? Is that not actually firmly in CBN's responsibilities rather than some other things like they're foreign to customs territory?
Right, exactly. That whole
but
matter.
some of these things will require interagency collaboration.
Right.
What I'm saying, what I'm talking about is about certain departments of government playing possum, not playing their part. And I keep using the CBN example. Even in agriculture, I've said this before.
Yep.
The CBN has done more, has shown more initiative than the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Anchor Borrowers Program or the provision of seedlings.
Right.
Why is it the CBN that is providing seedlings for agricultural development in the country? And that, I think, is an area that government needs to worry about. No government department exists in isolation. So if one department moves forward, other aspects that are, other agencies that are involved should collaborate. This is my point that I'm making.
Agreed.
Well made.
And as for the other one that you talked about, electrical appliance and other, one problem we have in this country, we always attribute everything to God. Nigerian consumers do not push their rights.
Right.
What is the Nigerian standard? We have heard about the British standard. What is the Nigerian standard? Who is insisting on that Nigerian standard?
This is the thing.
We have a standards organization of Nigeria, but do consumers know that there is a standard to everything? when your electricity blows up or something, you say, oh, it's the way God has done it. We thank God that it's not...
it's not worse.
Yes!
The house didn't burn
Yeah.
down.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Rotus. For an update on the COVID-19 pandemic, Adeswa Omorwa is here with us. Good morning, Adeswa.
Good morning, Tundu, and good morning, Dr. Abati. Thank God it's Friday.
Yes.
Good to be here. Another Nigerian thanking God for another day.
Yes, exactly.
Well, the U.S. is urging Canada to use federal powers to end or to clear a blockade along their shared borders. But with copycats of those freedom convoy planned in the U.S. itself, it looks like the truckers' protest against COVID-19 vaccine rules in Canada is showing no sign of ending anytime soon. We're also seeing mask mandates, especially outdoors, being dropped in parts of the world. In the last 24 hours, it's almost difficult to keep track of how many countries have announced they're dropping mask mandates, including many states in the U.S. Well, for the last time this week, let's look at the major data as regards this pandemic. At least 405 million infections, over 5.7 million deaths, and 10.1 billion vaccine doses have now been administered. Here in Nigeria, 48 new cases were officially reported from 8 states, as well as the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. And for the 5th day in a row, Nigeria has not reported any COVID-19 related deaths. Well, COVID-19 vaccination update released by the Nigerian government shows that as at February 9th, 16.1 million eligible persons targeted for this vaccination have now received the first dose, while 6.5 million others have been fully vaccinated after receiving their second jab. Nigeria is also rolling out booster shots of the COVID-19 vaccines at the moment. And less than 48 hours after the WHO DG, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, warned that the pandemic isn't finished, the regional director for the WHO here in Africa yesterday said the continent of Africa is transitioning out of the COVID-19 pandemic phase, out of the phase of its outbreak to now living with the virus. What a contradiction. However, Dr. Mashitizo Moeti says if the current trends holds and that there seems to be light at the end of the tunnel for Africa, but she says that the continent must remain vigilant. Well, it was also at that regular briefing that Dr. Moeti revealed that the number of COVID infections and deaths in Africa could be 7 times higher than official data suggested. That's for infection. For death, she says the virus may have killed 2 to 3 times more than has been reported. That has been a debated issue. Africa spared the worst of the pandemic in terms of infections and deaths. Well, currently, you should have the map of the Africa CDC showing the dashboard of what Africa is actually going through when it comes to COVID-19 at the moment. It shows, in case you don't have it, okay, there you have it. It shows at the moment that there are 10.9 million COVID-19 infections and over 243,000 deaths. Now, if Dr. Moeti's revelation is anything to go by, it means that the figures should be reading infections 70 million and deaths 750,000. Well, away from Africa, Prince Charles, the eldest son and the heir to Queen Elizabeth II, is isolating after testing positive for coronavirus for the second time. The Prince of Wales first tested for the virus in March 2020. His office said he is triply vaccinated, meaning he has had his full vaccination and a booster shot. Well, there are concerns, however, over the Queen's health. This is because the Prince met with his mother, but we are told that the 95-year-old monarch is not currently displaying any symptoms, but it is not clear if she's tested negative or she's tested positive. And finally, this may be rare, but COVID during pregnancy can increase a woman's risk of stillbirth. A research that examined 68 prenatal deaths in 12 countries and published yesterday in a medical journal paints quite a startling picture of the destructive toll COVID-19 can have in unvaccinated pregnant women and their growing fetus. Now, the scientists discovered that coronavirus in these women can cause deadly harm to the babies because it attacks the placenta. For those who don't know, that's the vascular organ that serves as a fetus lifeline. And they said this can lead to exfoliation and stillbirth. All 68 babies were either stillborn or died 7 days of being born. Back to you guys.
Oh, that's really awful. There was this huge drive to get pregnant women vaccinated, but there was a lot of vaccine hesitancy among pregnant women because they were fearful of how it could, harm the baby. But now we can see that it's actually more dangerous to go unvaccinated. So that call continues. People should be urged really strongly to get vaccinated so that the baby has a chance of survival. Stillbirths all over the world are unfortunately and tragically pretty common. There are 2 million stillbirths all over the world every single year, and obviously most of them are in sub-Saharan Africa because people in this part of the world might not have access to regular antenatal appointments. Even little things like don't sleep on your back. A lot of pregnant women, they don't know that. After a certain stage in advancement, you cannot sleep on your back. Otherwise, it increases these risks, and they're just not aware. And now add the COVID-19 pandemic. It's really important that the word gets out. People are sensitized, and all they need to do is take a vaccine. As for Prince Charles, getting COVID a second time, he's not like his mother. I'm actually starting to suspect that Queen Elizabeth might be immortal. She might be a vampire. I don't believe she actually has COVID. I don't think she can ever catch COVID. I think that woman is amazing. She has such clearly physical as well as mental fortitude. So I do hope that Prince Charles recovers speedily and certainly has not infected his mother.
Okay. Talking about the WHO Regional Director for Africa, Machisido Moeti. Well, the part of what she says that I find interesting, but let's unpack it 2 ways. First, she says that Africa is transitioning from COVID to a situation where Africa can live with COVID. And that, look, we have made a lot of progress. We have moved from the pandemic to an endemic situation. Endemicity is the same argument that is used by the UK when Boris Johnson said the country is going to bring forward, the end of those restrictions to February 24 instead of March 24. However, Dr. Moeti's position contradicts the position of the WHO Director General, Tedros Ghebreyesus, who only a few days ago said Africa and other low and middle income countries are at great risk because they are not getting the support that they deserve. And he was calling on wealthy countries of the world to support the ACT Accelerator COVID program by providing about $23 billion to bridge the shortfall of $14 billion in the year 2021. The position of Dr. Moeti also contradicts the report that you brought yesterday, the Tony Blair Institute report, that also indicated that, look,
exactly,
there is mutation, there is a variance every 6 months, and that African countries in particular need to be better prepared. The third point that she made about the fact that there is a gap between what is reported and what exists in actuality is also a way of contradicting herself. But the underreporting of COVID figures or the failure, the problem with surveillance systems is not just a problem for Africa. It exists in other parts of the world. But what we know about Africa, as the Tony Blair Institute report indicated, is that there has been the level of impact that was expected has not happened. But Dr. Moeti, however, nonetheless, makes the point about the fact that African countries need to summon the political will to remain vigilant, and that vaccination should continue, systems should be put in place. On that second part, I think it's easy to take in some of the points that she has made. But there was also a statement made by John Kengasong, yes, who is in charge of the Africa CDC. And he was saying that, look, countries in Africa need to get ahead with the development of vaccine manufacturing And there are countries that are already ahead in that regard. Senegal, Morocco, Algeria, 10 countries, according to him. And I looked at the list. Nigeria is not there. So why is it that with all these promises we make, with all these statements that we make, Nigeria is not even showing up in terms of leadership, to provide vaccine manufacturing? The Algerians, the Moroccans, the South Africans, Senegal has an Institut Pasteur. Even the European Union is already engaging Senegal in this regard. What happened to Nigeria? A country that used to produce vaccines. So all those things are suddenly disappeared in our environment. Well, as for Prince Charles, well, COVID-19, we have always said, is no respecter of persons. The King of Spain, King Felipe VI, 71 years old, is also down with COVID this same week. The Queen of Denmark, Queen Margaret, is also down with COVID this same week. Okay, and this is an indication that people will just have to protect themselves because COVID is no respecter of persons, and no one is safe until everyone is safe. Thank you.
I'm going to send you a meme.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good weekend.